Chief political anchor and host of Special Report. And Bret, you'll be anchoring in just 2.5 hours the live press conference coming from Mar-a-Lago. But it is interesting, as you heard Chad talking there, and we've been highlighting some of the political reaction. It does appear that a large number of Democrats are really just leaning in. And we highlighted a little earlier Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, Democrat, saying that second unjustified war on my life. This war is illegal. It's embarrassing that we went from the World Cup to the world bully in less than 1 year. There's no reason for us to be at war with Venezuela. And it goes on, you see there. But it's pretty clear that this isn't a declaration of war.
Yeah. Good morning again. I love Chad Pergram and a little bit of at war and not a little bit pregnant. He always has the great phrases. But I think that this is interesting, and this is going to be the subject of the 11 a.m. news conference. A lot of it. You'll get a lot of details about how long this operation was in effect and how much planning and how successful it was. But let's just boil this all down. There is a pending 2020 indictment of Maduro and his wife in the Southern District of New York, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, says that is where they will face justice with a formal indictment process and a prosecution. And, you know, this operation, to Chad's point, very well said, tracks almost exactly the 37th anniversary of the operation to take out Manuel Noriega in Panama. That was December 20th, 1989. Very similar operation. He was convicted of drug and money laundering. There was an operation to take him. He eventually went to Miami. He faced prosecution, had 40 years in prison as a result of that prosecution. In that operation, there was a significant military force on the ground in Panama. There are legitimate questions, as I mentioned before, about briefing Congress and the top bipartisan officials on the leadership and the Senate and House Armed Services, or rather intelligence committees. But this operation is going to track that Manuel Noriega operation as far as its legality. And it is a legal operation where there is an indictment pending for Maduro and his wife. And I just want to read from this legal framework of the original indictment and how it's phrased. You can put up pictures of Maduro. Maduro helped manage and ultimately lead the Cartel of the Suns, a Venezuelan drug trafficking organization comprised of high-ranking Venezuelan officials. As he gained power in Venezuela, Maduro participated in a corrupt and violent narco-terrorism conspiracy with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC, a designated foreign terrorist organization. Maduro negotiated multi-ton shipments of FARC-produced cocaine, directed the Cartel of the Suns to provide military-grade weapons to the FARC, coordinated with narcotics traffickers in Honduras and other countries to facilitate large-scale drug trafficking, and solicited assistance from FARC leadership in training an unsanctioned militia group that functioned in essence as an armed forces unit for the Cartel of the Suns. In March of 2020, Maduro was charged in the Southern District of New York for narco-terrorism conspiracy to import cocaine, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. This is a detailed indictment that goes back to 2020, and this is a legal action that was supported by a military operation to protect those going in to grab him and his wife.
You know, as you pointed out earlier, Bret, there are plenty of legitimate questions about authorization and to what degree Congress needed to be consulted. But as a logistical matter, I would imagine that the Trump administration would make the argument that, you know, this was a successful operation. We got him where he slept under the cover of darkness. We did it in a matter of minutes or hours. Can you imagine if we had to go to Congress, especially with the fraught politics of today, and the danger that any sort of operation like that could have been leaked out? I can hear President Trump now sort of weighing in on all that.
100%. That's going to be his answer. You know, he's going to say Congress leaks, and he's going to, you know, say that is, you know, reason for the secrecy and what they were trying to do. And there will be sniping about it, largely from Democrats up on the Hill, saying we usually get informed, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as the big impact here, I don't think that the argument that Gallego makes about war and the authorization of military force is the same because of the legal justification. And Jonathan Turley, who's really good on all of this stuff, has a piece out now, and he's posted it. And he says, Trump does not need congressional approval for this type of operation. Presidents, including Democratic presidents, have launched lethal attacks regularly against individuals. President Barack Obama killed an American citizen under this kill list policy. If Obama can vaporize an American citizen without even a criminal charge, Trump can capture a foreign citizen with a pending criminal indictment without prior congressional approval. So I think that this argument is going to kind of go by the wayside. More important, I think, are the questions that they will face and the president will get at the 11 a.m. news conference about next steps.
Right.
Who is leading in Venezuela? Does that person become the next target? How can you install the opposition forces? Has that been negotiated beforehand? What are the next steps? What are the next countries that you're concerned about? Colombia, next door, Mexico. How does that play out? And I think that those are the bigger picture questions as far more than the process questions of congressional approval in this operation.
And just to pick up on that for a second, Brett, because that's such an important question about what happens next, because as Victoria Coates was telling us a little earlier, raising a great point, which is, will the generals, and some of them are among those in that indictment from 2020 that were accused and indicted for being part of running the Cartel del Sol, that were working under Maduro, will they accept someone like Maria Corina Machado, who, as you well remember, won the Nobel Peace Prize? She then, in turn, dedicated it to President Trump for his efforts. You know, will they accept it? And if they won't, what sort of situation will we then have on our hands with regards to President Trump's effort to get the opposition party in power?
Those are great questions, Griff. And I think that Machado probably knows who's listed in those indictments, probably knows exactly who is on the good side and the bad side as when it comes to the military people. And they'll have to clean house if they take over in that way. I think getting to that point A to point B, is really the big question here, and how long that takes and how the U.S. is involved. If I had to guess, we have a pretty detailed level of information about what's going on the ground. And anecdotally, you're hearing from Venezuelans already, as the sun has risen there, that posters of Maduro are being ripped off buildings. There's on social media video of people taking to the street and celebrating. There are intelligence officials who were said to just leave their posts once they heard the bombs dropping. So I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of courage when it comes to inside the old regime under Maduro, but we'll see.
Bret, do you anticipate any more arrests being made? As Griff just mentioned, it was more than just Maduro who was on the indictment. There are many more, including some of those generals. Do you think that the operation may not be over, maybe in terms of military strikes, but that more arrests will be made?
Another good question for the 11 o'clock. I think that there's I sense that there's not a lot of movement right now as far as getting back on the ground. I think they wanted this to be tactical and surgical, in and out, get the leader, and we should say not the elected leader, the disputed leader, and his wife out to face charges, and then see where the dust settles with the others. We have been on the ground dealing with opposition forces for some time. And I think you're going to probably hear Secretary Rubio and others talk to that level of planning in a couple hours.
Bret, I just want to add in here, literally 60 seconds ago, Vice President J.D. Vance has now weighed in on X. And he says this: the president offered multiple off-ramps, but was very clear throughout this process that drug trafficking must stop, and the stolen oil must be returned to the United States. Maduro is the newest person to find out that President Trump means what he says. And he adds, kudos to our brave special operators who pulled off a truly impressive operation. So there you have it. We're learning a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see more and more as the morning progresses. I think another big question is what happens with Cuba. They are, they really are tied to Venezuela. It's like their lifeblood, and you may see changes coming to Cuba. And is that next? If you look at the big picture, this could have a ripple effect in Latin America and on a number of different fronts. This is structured as a legal operation because of the indictment, but it could be much broader than that. And we have to look at the implications there.
Yeah, I sort of ask it, Brett, and I think you're right about, this is a very interesting tweet. Because the line where Vice President Vance says that Maduro is just the newest person to learn that Trump's message is very clear that, quote, the drug trafficking must stop. And when I hear that, I think, what must Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, be thinking? What message does this operation potentially set up for her? Now, she has taken to social media seemingly condemning this by simply pointing to Article 2 of the UN Charter, talking about not, infringing on sovereignty rights of another country. We know from our Fox News reporting that actually Mexico has cooperated quite a bit with our federal immigration law enforcement and Border Patrol and the like. However, it's unclear that President Trump and President Sheinbaum have developed a really good relationship. Do you think that she must be wondering what this all means for her?
100%. I mean, the Mexican president, the Colombian president, I know you had the guest on who's running for Colombian president, and I think that all of those leaders have to be looking over their shoulder as far as what that means and where this goes and tying to the drug cartels. That's the ultimate thread here, is the drug cartels and the use of these different cartels to funnel drugs into the U.S., thereby making the case against these leaders. I'll tell you something here that wasn't going to say, but we were contacted through intermediaries to have potentially an interview with Nicolas Maduro in recent weeks. And we were in the process of kind of having back channel communications. They wanted me to come to Caracas. It was not feasible, and they couldn't make a decision. He was worried about security. I was talking to the U.S. About the possibilities, and then this all came to pass. But, obviously, Nicolas Maduro saw that this was coming. Yeah. And, you saw that video of him in the car and doing that interview with the Spanish channel saying, I'll give you the U.S. whatever they want. He knew this was transpiring. And my wife was not into me going to Caracas either, but I was ready to go, guys. I was ready to go.
That's fascinating, and it really does give you a glimpse into what maybe he was thinking. And it does also make you kind of wonder when you look around and you see that there has been no help coming to the rescue for him, whether or not maybe he recognized that not only was he going down, but he was going down alone at this point.
I think so, and I think that you see these muted responses. I mean, they say that they don't have the authorization, and this is a threat to sovereignty. But it is not a big declaration from these world powers, and I think everyone knew that this action was getting ready to happen, especially on the legal front after that indictment, and that's what they were going to use to hang this on. And this trial will go forward. This prosecution, likely Maduro and his wife are going to face a formal indictment in the U.S. Southern District of New York, I would assume, in coming days. Yeah.
Well, we'll be watching that, and we will be tuning in at 11 a.m. this morning to watch your coverage of President Trump's presser. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
See you there.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.